Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. 97% of people who desperately want to change their lives will be living the exact same reality 1 year from today. Same job they hate, same toxic relationships, same destructive habits, same limiting beliefs that keep them trapped in cycles of mediocrity. But here's what's even more shocking. It's not because they lack willpower, motivation, or good intentions. It's because they're fighting against the most powerful force in human psychology, a force so invisible yet so dominant that it controls every decision you make without you even realizing it. This force has been programmed into your brain since childhood, and it's designed to keep you exactly where you are right now. The 3% who actually transform their lives have cracked a code that most people never discover. They understand how to rewire their psychological conditioning at the deepest level, bypassing the mental prison that keeps everyone else stuck. What you're about to learn isn't another feel-good self-help theory. It's the science-backed method that separates those who dream about change from those who actually live it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your previous attempts at transformation failed and the specific steps to join the 3% who break free. Part 1. The Identity Hijack Principle. There's a hidden saboteur living inside your mind right now, and it's the reason every diet fails, every workout plan gets abandoned, and every promise you make to yourself gets broken. This saboteur isn't laziness or lack of motivation. It's something far more cunning and deeply embedded in your psychology. Most people spend their entire lives fighting this invisible force without ever realizing it exists. They attack the symptoms but never touch the root cause of why change feels so impossible. Here's what happens every single time you try to transform your life. You decide you want to lose weight, so you start eating salads and hitting the gym. You want to be more productive, so you download apps and create schedules. You want better relationships, so you read books and practice communication techniques. But within weeks, sometimes days, you're back to your old patterns. The reason isn't what you think. The problem is that you're trying to change your actions while your identity remains exactly the same. Your subconscious mind has a crystal clear picture of who you are, and it will sabotage any behavior that doesn't match that identity. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with weight, your mind will find ways to keep you struggling. If you identify as disorganized, your brain will resist organization systems. If you believe you're bad with money, you'll unconsciously make financial mistakes. This is strategy number 1 out of 10 that separates people who actually change from those who stay stuck forever. It's called the Identity Hijack Principle.
And it works by performing what I call identity surgery on yourself. Instead of trying to force new actions onto an old identity, you reverse engineer the process entirely. Here's exactly how it works. Before you change a single behavior, you must first decide who you need to become. If you want to lose 50 pounds, don't start with a diet. Start by asking yourself, what kind of person weighs 50 pounds less? They'd probably see themselves as someone who values their health, who enjoys physical activity, who makes conscious food choices. That's your new identity. Then comes the crucial part. You start collecting evidence that proves you are already that person. Every time you choose an apple over chips, you tell yourself this is what health-conscious people do, and I am a health-conscious person. Every time you take the stairs instead of the elevator, you reinforce that you are someone who values fitness. You're literally rewiring your self-concept, one small action at a time. Your brain craves consistency between who you think you are and how you behave. When you change your identity first, your actions naturally align to match. The person who sees themselves as organized doesn't need willpower to keep a clean desk. The person who identifies as wealthy doesn't need motivation to save money. The behavior flows effortlessly from the identity. Most people have this completely backwards, which is why they fail repeatedly. They're trying to act like someone they don't believe they are, and their subconscious mind fights them every step of the way. But when you hack your identity first, change becomes inevitable, instead of impossible. Part 2. The Comfort Zone Mirage. Something you've been told your entire life about comfort zones is not just wrong, it's keeping you trapped in a psychological prison that you don't even realize you're in. Everyone talks about stepping out of your comfort zone like it's this warm, cozy place that you need to occasionally leave. But here's the truth that will change everything about how you approach personal growth. Your comfort zone isn't comfortable at all. It's a mirage, an illusion your brain creates to keep you from facing the unknown. Think about your life right now. Are you actually comfortable with your current situation? Are you truly at peace with your relationships, your career, your health, your finances? If you're watching this video, probably not. What you call your comfort zone is actually a familiar zone. It's not bringing you joy or satisfaction. It's just predictable. Your brain mistakes familiarity for safety, even when that familiarity is slowly destroying your potential. You stay in the toxic relationship because it's familiar. You keep the job you hate because it's predictable. You maintain habits that harm you because they're known quantities. The real trap is that this fake comfort zone creates a feedback loop that gets stronger every day. The longer you stay in familiar territory, the more foreign everything else becomes. The more foreign other possibilities seem, the more your current situation feels like the only safe option. You become a prisoner who's convinced the cell is protecting you from the dangers outside. This brings us to strategy number 2 out of 10 for breaking free from the patterns that keep most people stuck. It's called the Controlled Discomfort Protocol, and it's designed to systematically expand your tolerance for uncertainty until what used to terrify you becomes your new normal. Here's how the protocol works. Instead of trying to make one giant leap out of your comfort zone, which usually results in snapping back like a rubber band, you create controlled micro-exposures to discomfort. You deliberately seek out small, manageable situations that make you slightly uncomfortable, and you stay in them until your nervous system adapts. If you're afraid of social interaction, you don't start by giving a speech to 100 people. You start by making eye contact with cashiers and saying thank you with genuine warmth. If you want to start a business but fear financial risk, you don't quit your job tomorrow. You start by selling one small product or service while keeping your safety net intact. The key is consistency and gradual progression. Every day, you do something that pushes the boundaries of your familiar zone just a little bit further. Your brain starts to realize that uncertainty doesn't equal danger. Unfamiliar doesn't mean unsafe. New experiences become less threatening and more exciting. What happens over time is remarkable. Your comfort zone doesn't just expand, it fundamentally transforms. You become someone who thrives on growth instead of someone who fears it. Challenges become opportunities instead of threats. The unknown becomes a playground instead of a prison. The people who actually change their lives aren't the ones who feel no fear. They're the ones who have trained themselves to feel fear and move forward anyway. They've realized that the discomfort of growth is temporary, but the regret of staying stuck lasts forever. Part 3. The Neural Highway Hack. Your brain is running a sophisticated highway system right now, and most of the traffic is going to destinations you don't want to reach. Every habit, every automatic reaction, every pattern that keeps you stuck is traveling on neural superhighways that have been under construction your entire life. The reason change feels so hard isn't because you lack discipline, it's because you're trying to fight against infrastructure that was built to make your current behaviors effortless. Here's what most people don't understand about how the brain actually works. Every time you repeat a thought, emotion, or action, you're literally strengthening the neural pathway that supports it. Think of it like walking through a field. The first time you cross the grass, you barely leave a trace. But if you walk the same path day after day, year after year, you create a worn trail that becomes the obvious route for anyone crossing that field. Your brain has worn trails for everything: how you respond to stress, how you handle criticism, how you approach challenges, what you do when you're bored, how you react to conflict. These patterns feel automatic because they are automatic. Your brain is simply following the most established neural pathways, taking the routes with the least resistance. The problem is that most of these superhighways were built when you were young, when your brain was developing, and you had limited information about how the world works. The coping mechanisms that helped you survive childhood, the defense strategies that protected you from early emotional pain, the survival patterns that got you through difficult times, these are still running your life today, even though they're no longer serving you. But here's the incredible news that changes everything. Your brain maintains something called neuroplasticity throughout your entire life. This means you can literally rewire your neural networks at any age. You can build new superhighways that lead to the destinations you actually want to reach. You can make healthy patterns as automatic as unhealthy ones currently are. This is strategy number 3 out of 10, and it's called the neural highway hack. It works by understanding exactly how to build new neural pathways efficiently while simultaneously weakening the old ones that no longer serve you. The process starts with something I call the 20-second rule. Research shows that if you can interrupt an old pattern for just 20 seconds, you create a window where your conscious mind can take control from your automatic brain. The moment you feel yourself falling into an old pattern, you count to 20 while taking deep breaths. This simple pause disrupts the neural superhighway and gives you a choice point. During that 20-second window, you immediately engage in what's called a pattern interruption technique. You do something completely different from what the old pattern would have you do. If your pattern is to reach for your phone when you're anxious, you instead do 10 jumping jacks. If your pattern is to eat junk food when you're stressed, you instead write down 3 things you're grateful for. The key is that the new behavior doesn't have to be perfect or even directly related to your goal. It just has to be different. Every time you choose the new response instead of the automatic one, you're literally weakening the old neural pathway while strengthening a new one. You're redirecting traffic from the old superhighway to a new route. Consistency is everything in this process. It takes approximately 66 days of repetition to build a new neural pathway strong enough to compete with an old one. But here's what's amazing. After about 3 weeks, the new pattern starts to feel easier. After 6 weeks, it feels natural. After 3 months, it becomes your new automatic response. You're essentially becoming the architect of your own brain, designing neural infrastructure that supports the person you want to become, instead of keeping you trapped in patterns from your past. Part 4. The energy leak audit. There's an invisible force draining your power to change right now, and it's so subtle that you probably don't even notice it happening. Every day, you wake up with a finite amount of mental and emotional energy. Think of it like a smartphone battery that starts at 100% each morning. By the end of the day, that battery is completely drained. But most people have no idea where the energy actually went. The reason your transformation attempts keep failing isn't because you lack motivation when you start. It's because by the time you need to make the difficult choices that create change, your energy reserves are already depleted. You've been unconsciously bleeding power throughout the day, through what I call micro-habits, tiny energy-sucking behaviors that seem harmless individually, but collectively sabotage your ability to sustain meaningful change. Here's what's happening without your awareness. Every decision, no matter how small, uses mental energy. Every internal conflict, every moment of indecision, every time you have to resist an impulse or force yourself to do something you don't want to do, you're drawing from your finite energy bank account. Most people are bankrupt by noon and don't realize why they can't stick to their evening workout or healthy dinner plans. The energy leaks are everywhere. You waste energy deciding what to wear because your closet is disorganized. You drain power scrolling social media mindlessly instead of intentionally. You burn mental fuel, having the same internal arguments with yourself over and over. You lose energy to clutter in your environment that creates constant low-level stress. You bleed power through toxic relationships that leave you emotionally exhausted. Each leak seems insignificant, but they compound throughout the day like death by 1,000 cuts. By the time you need willpower for the changes that matter, you're running on empty. This is why you can feel motivated about your goals in the morning, but completely defeated by evening. It's not a character flaw, it's energy mismanagement. This brings us to strategy number 4 out of 10, called the energy leak audit. This is a systematic process for identifying and plugging the hidden drains on your transformation power so that you have maximum energy available for the changes that will actually impact your life. The audit works in 3 phases. First, you become a detective of your own energy patterns. For 1 week, you track your energy levels every 2 hours on a scale from 1 to 10. You note what activities, interactions, and decisions preceded your energy drops. You start to see patterns that were invisible before. Most people discover they're losing massive amounts of energy to decision fatigue around trivial choices. They spend 10 minutes every morning deciding what to eat for breakfast instead of having a standard healthy option. They waste mental power choosing what to watch on Netflix instead of having a predetermined list of worthwhile content. They drain energy debating whether to exercise instead of having a non-negotiable schedule. The second phase is strategic elimination. You identify the biggest energy drains and systematically remove them from your life. You automate decisions that don't matter, so you can save your mental resources for decisions that do. You create systems that eliminate internal conflicts before they drain your power. The third phase is energy amplification. You identify the activities, environments, and relationships that actually give you energy instead of taking it away. You spend time in nature if that recharges you. You listen to music that elevates your mood. You connect with people who inspire you instead of people who deplete you. The result is that you go from being constantly energy depleted to having abundant reserves for the changes that matter. You stop feeling like change requires superhuman willpower because you finally have the mental and emotional resources to sustain new behaviors. You realize that successful transformation isn't about having more discipline, it's about having more energy available when you need it most. Part 5. The future self-negotiation. Every decision you make is actually a negotiation between 2 versions of yourself, and most people don't even realize this conversation is happening. There's your current self, who wants immediate gratification, comfort, and the path of least resistance. Then there's your future self, who wants long-term success, health, and fulfillment. The problem is that your current self almost always wins these negotiations, because your future self isn't in the room to speak up for their interests. This is why you choose the pizza over the salad, the couch over the gym, the immediate pleasure over the long-term benefit. Your current self is loud, demanding, and present. Your future self is quiet, abstract, and easy to ignore. But here's what changes everything about personal transformation. Your future self is actually the most important person in your life, and they deserve a voice in every choice you make. Think about it this way. Every single day, you make hundreds of decisions that either serve your future self or betray them. When you hit the snooze button instead of getting up to exercise, you're stealing time from your future self's health. When you spend money on things you don't need instead of saving, you're limiting your future self's options. When you avoid difficult conversations, you're passing problems to your future self to handle. Most people treat their future self like a stranger they'll never meet. They make choices as if their future self won't have to live with the consequences. But the truth is, you will become that future self, and they will have to live with every decision you make today. The relationship between your current self and your future self is the most important relationship you'll ever have. The people who actually create lasting change have figured out how to make their future self a real presence in their daily decisions. They've learned to hear that voice, to consider those interests, to negotiate deals that work for both versions of themselves. This is strategy number 5 out of 10, and it's called future self-negotiation. Here's exactly how it works. Before making any significant decision, you literally have a conversation with your future self. You ask them how they would feel about the choice you're considering. You imagine yourself 6 months, 1 year, 5 years from now, and you let that version of yourself weigh in on the decision. When you're tempted to skip your workout, you ask your future self how they feel about missing another day of exercise. When you're considering buying something expensive, you ask your future self if they would rather have that object or the money in their savings account. When you're about to eat junk food, you check in with your future self about how they want to feel in their body. The key is making this conversation vivid and real. You don't just think about your future self abstractly. You visualize them clearly. You imagine their face, their body, their living situation, their emotional state. You consider their goals, their challenges, their regrets. You make them as real as any other person whose opinion you value. What happens is remarkable. Suddenly, choices that seem difficult become obvious. It's easy to betray an abstract concept of your future self, but it's much harder to betray a real person you care about. When your future self becomes a vivid presence in your decision-making process, you naturally start making choices that serve their interests. You realize that taking care of your future self isn't sacrifice. It's the ultimate act of self-love. Every healthy choice, every difficult conversation, every moment of discipline is a gift you're giving to the person you're becoming. You start to feel proud knowing that your future self will thank you for the choices you're making today. This creates a positive feedback loop. As you make better decisions, you start to trust yourself more. As you trust yourself more, you start to believe in your ability to change. As you believe in your ability to change, you start making even better decisions. Your relationship with yourself transforms from one of self-sabotage to one of self-support. Part 6. The Environment Design Matrix. Right now, your environment is making thousands of decisions for you every single day. And most of those decisions are keeping you exactly where you are. Every object you see, every app on your phone, every person in your social circle, every system in your home and workspace is either supporting the person you want to become or reinforcing the person you're trying to leave behind. The tragedy is that most people are trying to change themselves while living in environments that are designed to keep them stuck. Here's what's happening that you probably don't realize. Your willpower is finite, but your environment is always on. Every time you have to resist temptation, every time you have to force yourself to make a good choice, every time you have to fight against your surroundings to do the right thing, you're draining your mental energy unnecessarily. You're making change harder than it needs to be because you're fighting an uphill battle against your own environment. Think about your current living space. If you want to eat healthier, is healthy food the easiest thing to access in your kitchen? Or do you have to dig past cookies and chips to find an apple? If you want to exercise more, are your workout clothes visible and ready? Or are they buried in a drawer under clothes you never wear? If you want to read more, are books prominently displayed where you can see them? Or are they hidden away while your TV dominates the room? Your digital environment is even more powerful and usually more toxic. Your phone is probably designed to waste your time rather than help you grow. Your social media feeds are optimized to trigger comparison and consumption rather than inspiration and creation. Your computer desktop is probably chaotic rather than organized around your priorities. Your apps are arranged for entertainment rather than productivity. Most people are essentially trying to run a marathon while wearing ankle weights. They're attempting to build new habits while surrounded by cues that trigger old ones. They're trying to make good choices while living in environments that make bad choices inevitable, and good choices require heroic effort. This is strategy number 6 out of 10, called the Environment Design Matrix. It's a systematic approach to engineering your physical and digital spaces so that good choices become automatic and bad choices become nearly impossible. Instead of relying on willpower to overcome your environment, you design an environment that supports your willpower. The matrix works on 4 levels. Level 1 is elimination. You remove triggers for behaviors you want to stop. If you want to eat less junk food, you don't keep junk food in your house. If you want to spend less time on social media, you delete the apps from your phone. If you want to stop watching so much TV, you unplug the television and put it in a closet. Level 2.
is optimization. You make good choices as easy as possible. You prepare healthy meals in advance, so eating well requires no willpower. You lay out your workout clothes the night before, so exercising requires no decision-making. You keep books next to your bed, so reading is more convenient than scrolling your phone. Level 3 is automation. You create systems that make positive behaviors happen without any conscious effort. You set up automatic transfers to your savings account, so you save money without thinking about it. You schedule workouts in your calendar like important meetings, so exercise becomes non-negotiable. You use apps that block distracting websites during your productive hours. Level 4 is amplification. You surround yourself with cues that reinforce your desired identity and goals. You put up pictures that remind you of who you're becoming. You create visual reminders of your goals in places where you'll see them multiple times per day. You organize your space so that it reflects the person you want to be rather than the person you've been. When you properly design your environment, change stops feeling like a constant battle against temptation and starts feeling like a natural flow toward your goals. You're no longer swimming against the current. You're floating downstream toward the life you actually want. Your social circle isn't just influencing your mood or your weekend plans. It's literally programming your beliefs about what's possible, what's normal, and what you deserve. Every conversation, every shared experience, every moment of approval or judgment from your inner circle is either accelerating your growth or anchoring you to mediocrity. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most people avoid facing. If everyone around you is stuck in patterns you want to break, you will unconsciously stay stuck to maintain belonging. If everyone in your circle settles for average, pushing for excellence will feel like betraying your tribe. If everyone around you complains about their circumstances instead of changing them, taking responsibility for your life will make you the outsider. Humans are wired for social survival above individual success. Your brain will sacrifice your personal growth to maintain social connection, because throughout most of human history, being rejected by your tribe meant death. This ancient programming is still running your modern life, keeping you small to stay safe, keeping you stuck to stay accepted. The problem goes deeper than just peer pressure or bad influences. Your brain actually mirrors the neural patterns of people you spend time with. Scientists call this neural resonance, and it means you literally start to think like the people around you without even realizing it. Their limiting beliefs become your limiting beliefs. Their excuses become your excuses. Their level of ambition becomes your ceiling. But here's what's equally powerful and what gives you complete control over your transformation. When you surround yourself with people who are growing, learning, and pushing their boundaries, you automatically start growing, learning, and pushing your boundaries too. When you spend time with people who take responsibility for their lives, you naturally become more responsible. When you're around people who believe in their potential, you start believing in yours. This is strategy number 7 out of 10, called social circle surgery. It's a strategic process for auditing your relationships and systematically shifting your social ecosystem to support the person you're becoming, instead of reinforcing the person you've been. The surgery begins with what I call the relationship audit. You list the people you spend the most time with, both in person and digitally. For each person, you honestly assess whether they are a change accelerator or a change anchor. Change accelerators inspire you, challenge you, believe in your potential, and model the behaviors you want to develop. Change anchors drain your energy, reinforce your limitations, discourage your ambitions, and pull you back toward old patterns. Most people discover that their social circle is accidentally designed to keep them stuck. They're surrounded by people who love them but don't believe in their ability to change. People who support them emotionally but don't challenge them intellectually. People who are comfortable with who they are but threatened by who they might become.
The next phase is strategic distancing. This doesn't mean cutting people out of your life dramatically or burning bridges unnecessarily. It means gradually spending less time with change anchors while being intentional about not discussing your goals and growth with people who don't support them. You stop seeking validation from people who can't see your vision. Simultaneously, you begin strategic attraction. You actively seek out change accelerators. You join groups, communities, and environments where people who are growing naturally gather. You read books by authors who think differently. You listen to podcasts by people who are living at the level you want to reach. You attend events where ambitious, growth-minded people spend their time. The most important part is strategic cultivation. When you find change accelerators, you invest in those relationships. You become the kind of person who accelerates change for others, which attracts more accelerators to you. You create genuine value in the lives of people who inspire you. Over time, your social circle transforms from a group that keeps you comfortable to a community that keeps you growing. You stop feeling weird for wanting more from life because you're surrounded by people who want more too. You stop feeling guilty for changing because everyone around you is changing. Your new normal becomes growth instead of stagnation. Part 8. The Failure Reframe Formula. Every person who has ever transformed their life has failed more times than most people have even tried. But they've learned to see failure completely differently than everyone else. While most people view setbacks as evidence that they're not cut out for change, successful people view setbacks as data collection for their next attempt. This difference in perspective is often the only thing separating people who eventually succeed from those who give up permanently. Here's what happens in the mind of someone who quits after failure. They try something new. It doesn't work perfectly, and they immediately make it mean something about their character or their potential. One failed diet becomes evidence that they'll never be healthy. One rejected job application becomes proof that they're not qualified for better opportunities. One awkward social interaction becomes confirmation that they're destined to be alone. This is called personalizing failure, and it's one of the most destructive mental habits humans can develop. When you personalize failure, you turn temporary setbacks into permanent identity statements. You transform external events into internal beliefs about who you are and what you're capable of achieving. Every failure becomes a brick in a wall that separates you from the life you want. But here's what's happening in the mind of someone who uses failure as fuel for future success. They try something new, it doesn't work perfectly, and they immediately start asking different questions. What worked? What didn't work? What would I do differently next time? What did I learn that I didn't know before? How is this setback actually setting me up for a better outcome? This is called extracting intelligence from failure, and it's the secret weapon of everyone who has ever achieved something significant. Instead of making failure mean something about their worth as a person, they make failure mean something about their strategy or their approach. They separate their identity from their results, which allows them to keep experimenting without destroying their self-confidence. This brings us to strategy number 8 out of 10, called the Failure Reframe Formula. It's a systematic method for transforming your relationship with setbacks so that every failure becomes strategic intelligence for your next attempt, instead of evidence of personal inadequacy. The formula has 4 components. First is the data extraction phase. Within 24 hours of any setback, you sit down and write out everything you learned from the experience. What assumptions were proven wrong? What obstacles did you underestimate? What skills do you need to develop? What resources do you need to acquire? You treat the failure like a research project instead of a reflection of your character. Second is the strategy adjustment phase. Based on the data you extracted, you modify your approach for the next attempt. You don't just try the same thing harder. You try a different thing smarter. Maybe you need a different system, a different environment, different support, or different timing. You use the intelligence from your failure to design a better experiment. Third is the identity protection phase. You consciously separate your worth as a person from your performance in any single attempt. You remind yourself that failure is an event, not an identity. You're not a failure because something you tried didn't work. You're a scientist collecting data about what works and what doesn't. Fourth is the momentum maintenance phase. Instead of letting failure stop your progress, you use it to accelerate your progress. You start your next attempt immediately, while the lessons from your failure are still fresh. You don't wait until you feel confident again. You build confidence by taking action despite the setback. What happens over time is remarkable. You stop fearing failure because failure becomes useful instead of painful. You start taking bigger risks because you know that even if they don't work out, you'll extract valuable intelligence from the experience. You become anti-fragile, someone who gets stronger from stress and setbacks instead of weaker. You realize that the people who never fail are usually the people who never try anything significant. The people who fail the most are often the people who succeed the most, because they're willing to experiment, learn, and iterate until they find what works. Failure stops being the end of your story and starts being the beginning of your next chapter. Part 9. The micro-momentum method. The biggest lie about personal transformation is that you need to make massive changes to see meaningful results. This lie keeps most people trapped in cycles of overwhelm and procrastination because they're waiting for the perfect moment to completely overhaul their lives. They want to change everything at once, which guarantees they'll change nothing at all. Meanwhile, the people who actually transform their lives have discovered the hidden power of ridiculously small actions that compound into extraordinary outcomes over time. Here's what's really happening when someone successfully changes their life. They don't wake up one day and suddenly become a completely different person. They wake up one day and do something slightly different. Then they do it again the next day and the next day and the next day. The difference is so small that it's almost invisible, but the consistency is so powerful that it becomes unstoppable. Most people completely underestimate the power of small actions because they can't see the compound effect in real time. When you do one push-up, you don't immediately look different. When you read one page of a book, you don't immediately become smarter. When you save $1, you don't immediately become wealthy. The change feels insignificant, so people dismiss it as worthless. But here's what they're missing. Small actions create momentum, and momentum is the most valuable force in personal transformation. Once you start moving in the right direction, it becomes easier to keep moving in that direction. Once you prove to yourself that you can keep a tiny commitment, it becomes easier to keep bigger commitments. Once you experience the satisfaction of daily progress, you become addicted to that feeling. The problem with trying to make big changes is that they require massive amounts of willpower, motivation, and energy. When life gets stressful, when your motivation dips, when unexpected challenges arise, your big changes are the first things to get abandoned. But small changes require so little effort that you can maintain them even when everything else in your life is chaotic. This is strategy number 9 out of 10, called the micro-momentum method. It's designed to help you build unstoppable forward progress by focusing on actions so small that they feel almost silly, but so consistent that they create powerful psychological and practical momentum toward your goals. The method starts with what I call the absurdly small commitment. Instead of committing to work out for an hour every day, you commit to do one push-up every day. Instead of committing to read for 30 minutes every day, you commit to read one page every day. Instead of committing to meditate for 20 minutes every day, you commit to take 3 conscious breaths every day. The key is that your daily commitment must be so small that you can't talk yourself out of it, even on your worst days. It should take less than 2 minutes to complete and require no special equipment, location, or circumstances. The goal isn't to get results from the action itself. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can keep commitments and to build the identity of someone who takes daily action toward their goals. Once you've maintained your absurdly small commitment for at least 2 weeks, you enter the natural expansion phase. You don't force yourself to do more. You allow yourself to do more when you feel inspired. Some days you'll do your 1 push-up and stop. Other days you'll do your 1 push-up and feel motivated to do 10 more. You let momentum pull you forward instead of trying to push yourself forward. What happens over time defies most people's expectations. Those single daily push-ups turn into full workout routines. Those single daily pages turn into completed books and new knowledge. Those 3 daily conscious breaths turn into regular meditation practices that change your entire relationship with stress and anxiety. But the most important transformation isn't in your actions, it's in your identity. You become someone who keeps commitments to themselves. Someone who takes daily action regardless of how they feel. Someone who values consistency over intensity. Someone who understands that success is built through small, repeated actions rather than dramatic, sporadic efforts. You stop waiting for motivation to take action and start taking action to create motivation. You stop looking for the perfect moment to start and start creating momentum that makes every moment more perfect. You realize that the people who seem to have incredible discipline aren't superhuman. They've just mastered the art of making progress inevitable through the power of micro-momentum. Part 10. The psychological time travel technique. Most people use visualization completely wrong, and that's why it doesn't work for them. They sit there and imagine their dream life like they're watching a movie, hoping that somehow positive thinking will magically transform their reality. They visualize success while feeling like failures. They imagine confidence while drowning in self-doubt. They picture their goals while living in patterns that pull them in the opposite direction. This kind of wishful thinking isn't just ineffective, it's actually counterproductive, because it creates a false sense of accomplishment without any real progress. But there's a completely different way to use your imagination that actually rewires your brain and changes your behavior at the deepest level. Instead of using visualization as fantasy, you can use it as psychological time travel, a tool for experiencing your future reality so vividly that your current self naturally begins to align with that vision. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about neural programming. Here's what happens in your brain when you visualize something correctly. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you mentally rehearse a scenario with enough detail and emotional intensity, your brain creates neural pathways, as if you actually lived through that experience. You're literally programming your mind with new patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. The people who achieve extraordinary things don't just set goals and hope for the best. They spend time mentally living in their desired future, experiencing what it feels like to be the person they want to become, practicing the thoughts and emotions that person would have. They make their future self so real that their current self starts changing automatically to match that vision. This is strategy number 10 out of 10, the final piece of the transformation puzzle. It's called the psychological time travel technique, and it's designed to help you experience your future reality so completely that becoming that person feels inevitable instead of impossible. The technique works through what I call immersive future experiencing. You don't just picture your goals. You step into the life of your future self and experience a day in their reality from the inside out. You feel what they feel when they wake up in their body. You experience their confidence, their energy, their sense of purpose. You live through their daily routines, their challenges, their victories. You start by choosing a specific time frame, usually 1 to 3 years in the future. You imagine that you've already achieved your primary goals and transformed into the person you want to become. Then you pick one ordinary day in that future life and experience it in complete detail from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep. You feel your future self waking up in their body, How do they feel physically? What's their energy level? What's their posture? You experience their morning routine. What do they eat for breakfast? How do they prepare for their day? What thoughts are going through their mind? You live through their work or daily activities. What does their career look like? How do they interact with people? What challenges do they face, and how do they handle them? You feel their confidence, their competence, their sense of fulfillment. You experience their relationships. How do they connect with others? What kind of conversations do they have? How do they handle conflict or difficult situations? The key is to make every detail as vivid and specific as possible. You don't just see your future self from the outside, you become them temporarily. You feel their emotions, think their thoughts, experience their physical sensations. You make it so real that when you return to your current reality, part of you feels like you just lived that future day. But the most crucial element is emotional alignment. You don't just imagine having what you want. You experience feeling the way your future self feels. If your future self is confident, you generate that feeling of confidence during the visualization. If your future self is peaceful, you create that sense of peace. If your future self is energized, you tap into that energy. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. Your brain starts to believe that this future reality is not just possible, but probable. Your subconscious mind begins working to close the gap between your current reality and your visualized future. You start noticing opportunities you missed before. You start making choices that align with your future self's values. You start becoming the person you've been mentally rehearsing. Your future self stops being a distant dream and becomes a present reality that you're growing into every single day. You don't have to force yourself to change because change starts happening naturally, as your current self aligns with the future self you've been experiencing. This is how visualization becomes a tool for actual transformation instead of just wishful thinking. You now possess the 10 strategies that separate the 3% who actually transform their lives from the 97% who remain stuck in patterns that no longer serve them. These aren't just techniques to try when you feel motivated. They are systematic approaches to rewiring the deepest levels of your psychology so that change becomes inevitable instead of impossible. The identity hijack principle shows you how to change who you are before you change what you do. The comfort zone mirage reveals why staying safe is actually the riskiest choice you can make. The neural highway hack gives you the tools to literally rewire your brain for new patterns. The energy leak audit helps you reclaim the power that's been draining away without your awareness. Future self-negotiation transforms every decision into a conversation with the person you're becoming. The environment design matrix makes good choices automatic and bad choices nearly impossible. Social circle surgery surrounds you with people who accelerate your growth instead of anchoring you to mediocrity. The failure reframe formula turns every setback into strategic intelligence for your next attempt. The micro-momentum method proves that ridiculously small actions create unstoppable forward progress. And the psychological time travel technique allows you to experience your transformed life so vividly that becoming that person feels natural and inevitable. But here's what matters most. Information without implementation is just entertainment. You can know every strategy for transformation and still remain exactly where you are if you don't take action. The difference between the people who change and the people who stay stuck isn't knowledge, it's application. Choose one strategy that resonated most deeply with you and commit to implementing it for the next 30 days. Don't try to use all 10 at once. Master one completely before moving to the next. Remember, you're not just trying to change your life. You're learning to become someone who naturally creates the life they want. That transformation starts with your very next decision. The person you're meant to become is waiting for you to bridge the gap between who you are and who you could be. These 10 strategies are your bridge. The only question remaining is whether you'll cross it.